are the Pacers led by Tyrese Halliburton playoff contenders? They sit at a record of 12-10 right now, fifth in the Eastern Conference.
I think this team depends because, like, I want to say their plans are to rebuild, and Tyrese Halliburton's at the front of that. But like, it feels at times that it's supposed to be inevitable that Buddy Hield and Miles Turner were supposed to be traded at some point. And yeah, it feels like these guys are just they stick around and they stick around and they continue to be here. And of course, they have been playing great this season, especially Miles Turner. I mean, these two like contenders need to be after them, and we know who we're talking about when we say contenders. The Lakers need to go and grab these two guys. It's a must. But at the same time, they contribute to winning for this team. And every time I see this roster, they're able to continue to just take it to teams. And I don't know. I feel like they can be a playoff team. They definitely can. The East is kind of weak right now. Like if you look at the East, it's just like everybody besides the Boston Celtics and uh the Milwaukee Bucks and somewhat of the Cleveland Cavaliers. Everyone was kind of just like in the mix, in the fold. And I feel like Tyrese Halliburton. I mean, this guy's just been a double machine. 20 and 10. Like he had a record, I think, of 10 plus assists in 3 straight games without a turnover. I mean, that's just ridiculous. You would think someone like CP3 or Steve Nash would have broken that record, but it was just him. So, I mean, all credit to him. He's going to be all star this season, and I feel like he can definitely lead them to being a playoff team.
With the way the team's playing this first 22 games, man, they've been playing fantastic, especially Halliburton to from Hill to Turner to Benedict Mathurin. They've been showing up. They've been hooping for that team. But Halliburton averaging 20 and 10 and just showing up consistently every single game for that team. We expected them to finish what 11th, 12th in the conference, and they're outplaying our expectations. Every game they go into, they fight. They're coming to fight. You don't expect guys like Buddy Hield today. One day he's going to drop 27, and the next day you have Turner dropping 30, and then Benedict Mathurin's right there consistently averaging 22. And it's like, hey, it's to the roof for them. They're a bunch of young guys. They got a young roster, and it's like they're sitting at prime position right now, 12 and 10, 2.5 games behind the third seed. So really, right now at this point, there's no point in them tanking for a young pick. At this point, just keep on going the way they're playing and try to keep Buddy Hield and Miles Turner. I mean, once it gets to January, and if they're sitting at the 4th seed or the 5th seed, there's no point in trading those two guys. There's no point. So Halliburton, I really believe he's going to be an all-star this year. There's a couple good point guards in the East, but I feel like he's gonna get a spot in the East for sure. So it's good to see him playing. I do expect the Pacers to be some dark horse contenders. If they do make the playoffs, they're going to cause some problems. So can't wait to see that.
I feel like if I had to answer this question right now, which I will, are the Pacers playoff contenders with Halliburton? I do think they're playoff contenders right now, but I feel like that's not what the outlook of their season is. You know, like of course the Indiana Pacers, they're in no position to be competing for a championship right now with the way the roster is constructed. And we know like those two guys we mentioned, Buddy Hield and Miles Turner, those two guys are as good as gone at some point. It's just a matter of when with those two guys. So it's nice to be sitting at a record of 12-10. It's early on in the season, in my opinion. So you know it's kind of hard to tell who's a playoff contender and who's not. But they're definitely playing some good basketball right now. You know, Tyrese Halliburton, I think he had 40 assists in like 3 games without a turnover. Like it's just like he's putting up crazy numbers, being their floor general, and you know the main facilitator on that team. He's able to score the basketball a little bit as well, averaging 20 points along with those assists. But I feel like the East right now, with the East being weak, they're really taking advantage of the opportunity. They kind of this is kind of similar to what we were seeing from the Utah Jazz a couple of weeks ago, and then now the Utah Jazz have fallen back down to earth and they're back to reality. I think eventually what'll happen with the Indiana Pacers, because you know they're trying to rebuild with in Indiana. There's no way in hell these guys are trying to make the playoffs. You know they can play like they're trying to make the playoffs, but at some point Larry Bird is going to cut the cord short and just cut their season early and try to tank for a high draft pick. And also when you look at the East, a lot of teams aren't necessarily playing the greatest right now that had a playoff spot last year, like the Miami Heat sitting at a record of 11-12, and the Chicago Bulls 9-13. Then of course you have the two teams like the Knicks and then the Washington Wizards, who are kind of on the outside looking in. Indiana can compete with those two teams, but I feel like Miami, Toronto, Philly, Brooklyn, guys that are kind of right behind them, a couple games behind. those teams are going to be able to pick up their play and kind of, you know, move up in the standings. I feel like with the Indiana Pacers, at some point there's going to be a couple of weeks where they kind of struggle to get wins, but if they're able to keep this core all together, because, you know, of course, Miles Turner and Buddy Hield, those guys are only a phone call away from moving on to a different franchise. They're able to keep those guys together. I can see him being a playing team. But as of right now, the way they're playing, playoff contenders for sure. But if those guys stay together, I can see him being a playing team. That's for sure. But because the East will slowly get better. It's still early on in the season. We've reached December. So at some point, those guys are going to struggle. So it depends if everybody else below them struggles, then they'll be just fine. But that's pretty much a rare case. But I mean, we think about them. Those guys, like I said, they pretty much are similar for me to the Utah Jazz. The Utah Jazz.
I don't like to compare them to the Utah Jazz because I feel like these guys, like a team of Tyrese Halliburton, Buddy Hield, and Miles Turner, and then you have Benedict Mathurin that's playing at the level that he's at. Like I feel like that's a team, especially in the East, that's a team that could. That's a team that can do damage to me. The Jazz seem to be a team that's led by a role player, and of course, Lauri Markkanen playing great and whatnot. But it's like the Indiana Pacers are playing with like an actual star point guard, and they're playing with a great and a very solid center, a very, very good shooting guard, and a great rookie in Benedict Mathurin. I feel like they have just a bunch of pieces in comparison to like the Jazz. The Jazz are just more so like a bunch of role players that are just playing above their heads. I don't know. I don't see them similarly.
Are they similar to Sacramento then, would you say? Are they much closer to Sacramento?
Sacramento would probably be a better comparison. That makes more sense. It's like Fox and then Sabonis, and then you have Kevin Huerter. It's a much similar comparison.
Okay, I think that's more fair to say when assessing this Indiana Pacers team. But who knows, man? The Utah Jazz, they've fallen off, and of course the Sacramento Kings, a couple of teams that we talked about, you know, coming up on the rise. Maybe with the Indiana Pacers, we could be talking about them completely different, you know, 2 weeks from now.
Record a new hit, then we making us a film. Wouldn't sign a deal if I got a couple mil. Been in the lab, now they throwing out deals. Me and now Lakes, now that's overkill.